Welcome everyone to World Mental Health Day. We are marking this sort of amazing international day that encourages us to think about how do we create balance in our minds, balance in our life, how do we recognize when we are feeling mental health issues, and how do we support our friends and our families and our colleagues when we see that they might be experiencing those as well. I think it's really important to acknowledge these days where we come together and think about something and that has traditionally been very taboo. Before we hit the live one, we were just saying that, it's becoming more and more mainstream to be able to talk about these concepts. And I think something that's going to come out of COVID that is perhaps a positive is that we really do think about, am I healthy? I'm in my home, I'm alone. What does that mean? How do I maintain a healthy life that includes my mental wellness? And so I want to welcome you today to help us mark World Mental Health Day. Now, before we get started, I want to do a land acknowledgement. Now, we have friends who are joining us today from around the world. We have Costa Rica, we have Bermuda, we have friends here that perfect, that muted themselves. And we'll get everyone to introduce themselves in just a second. But in Canada, we're undergoing a process called truth and reconciliation. And what that means is that we're coming to understand through our schools and our institutions and the systems around us, what does it mean to be a country that was colonized and that exists now with settlers and those people who were colonized? And so as a part of that, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from Treaty 6 territory, which is the traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux people. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Indigenous people of all of the lands that we're on today, across North America, across Europe, across South America. And while we meet on this virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that the importance of the lands that we each call our home. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of our local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. And I think in particular in Canada, the acknowledgement today is important. In the summer, we've heard a lot of horrific stories coming out from across our land about Indigenous children who were put in residential schools and then lost their lives at those schools through the systemic oppressions and conditions that they were subject to that increased the likelihood that they would get sick and then prevented them from being treated for illnesses and all sorts of other issues that led to their death. We've talked about it. We have a reconciliation committee that will be addressing this more deeply, but it really did affect so many people in such significant ways. Members not only of our Indigenous communities who knew these atrocities that happened and had been trying to voice it over and over, but to everyday Canadians who probably did not want to think about it and were now forced to. And a lot of this being stuck at home and then being confronted by this happening in our history makes you reflect, what does it mean to be Canadian? What does it mean to be a part of these communities? How do I help people heal from these atrocious things that have happened in their past? And so as we think about our land acknowledgement and about truth and reconciliation and about World Mental Health Day, we would need to think about all these things that impact the history of our land and of our neighbors and of our communities, our friends in our schools who all carry these different cultural weights with them, as well as their own personal, physical, everyday weights. And so I think in this larger context of Mental Health Day, having our land acknowledgement is of particular importance to me and to, I'm sure, many people who are joining today. So I wanted to take a second to sort of talk about that and understand that. And I know that all of our countries are in different areas and places on their reconciliation journey. Some countries haven't started it. And I would encourage you to look into your local Indigenous groups and see what is the process of reconciliation going on in my country and how can I play a role in help making that healing. Anyways, that's our start. So today I'm going to quickly share our agenda as people are logging in, and then we'll get some of our schools to introduce themselves as they come online today. So we will start with this little welcome, and then if our loading speed rolls, there we go, and then we'll have our schools introduce themselves. We'll sort of do west to easty, but because many of our schools are going to be watching this later. So our Indonesian school, we have a school I think in Bangladesh, and another well, anyways, you'll see a little bit of schools. And they will be watching later, or they're joining us online on YouTube right now. And so as we will throw out to them as well, but they will be watching later, so we want to give them a shout out. We'll go to our guest speaker, and then we'll just have a nice facilitated discussion about what does this mean to us now that we've heard these stories, we've had this conversation. What does this mean in our country and in our context? And I'd love to hear from those that are watching both in our Zoom room and on YouTube. If you want to send us a note, we'd love to bring in your questions and your comments. And then we will finish up today. It's going to go quick, quick, quick. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I'm going to have my little list going on the background so I can see who is here. Now I know for sure that our friends from Russia are here because I've already been talking. But Anthony, would you like to say hello and introduce your school? And yeah, that would be wonderful.
All right. So I'm from Moscow, and I'm a teacher of English in 1576 school. It's, as I said, it's in Moscow. So, and here with me, there are two girls, Maria and Nicole. They are not my students, but they are on the same school, as I said. What else would you like to know?
No problem. That is great. What time is it in Moscow right now? I forgot to ask.
It's 7 p.m. right now.
Aw, thanks so much for joining, guys. Way to go. All right. And then we have our friends from Massachusetts here as well. Would you like to introduce where you're joining from and your school? Hello, hello. Oh, if you're sharing, you're muted. Sorry.
Oh, my class is yelling at me that I'm muted. Hi, I'm Kate Manassas. I'm a school psychologist, and I work with a group of high school age students, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders from the area, sort of a southeastern region of Massachusetts. And can I show you guys really quick? You can just wave. This is my classroom. My kids are all here. I think we've got like, yeah. This is so exciting to see so many people from all over the world, but we like to make sure that we study a lot of different topics that have to do with health, mental health. And I run a class once a week, and we meet on these topics. And then when it coincided perfectly with this live stream, so we're all here listening in. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much, Ms. Francis. Wonderful. And then we have, I think, some homeschoolers. Noah and Zappy, are you joining us from the Alberta Homeschool Network? Sometimes we have, or maybe you're joining us from somewhere else. Or if you wanted to put an intro in the chat, I would be happy to put it later if you don't want to speak on camera. I totally get that. And then as well, we have someone, Anna just logged on. If you would like to say hello, maybe while you two think about it, I'm going to have our two students who are here in our office just sort of, and they're going to, I don't know if they can lean in far enough. But we have two students here joining us live in Edmonton as well. And yes, so we're so excited to have everyone. Now I'm going to also acknowledge some of the schools that are going to be joining either later today or midway through, as well as on the live stream on YouTube, and then watching it later. So we have Manassas High School in Labrador City, Newfoundland, Lawfield School in Hamilton, Ontario, Lacombe Composite High School in Lacombe, Alberta, Coronation School in Edmonton, Dr. Ann Anderson High School in Edmonton, and then some schoolers from across Alberta who are always so wonderful and lovely and join in our events. We have Kelowna Secondary in Kelowna and the Pennington School in Pennington, New Jersey. And then our Bermuda Public School in Hamilton, Bermuda. A very long lab school name in Selatan, Indonesia. Thanks for joining us, Indonesia. And then St. Jude's School in San Jose, Costa Rica, as well as our friends from Russia. Yay! That is everyone. Thank you, everyone who signed up, who's going to enjoy and really sort of delve deep into today's topic around mental health. Now, our friends and ones are joining us from Canmore, Alberta today. Thank you for sharing. So, World Mental Health Day, just as a sort of like a why today? Is this really a legit thing, or did you make it up because you wanted to talk about it, Sarah? Which is a valid question. World Mental Health Day is observed actually every year on October 10th. So we're a couple days early, but school doesn't go on Sunday, so God did today. With an overall objective of raising awareness and mental health issues around the world and mobilizing efforts in support of mental health. So that's from the World Health Organization. And they're the ones that sort of started this shtick, really brought it to the forefront and started advocating for students and schools and really the general public to think about mental health as an important part of overall holistic wellness, that it's not disjoint, that it is a part of who we are, and that it needs to be prioritized in our conversations and our thoughts. And so as a part of that, we've invited guest speaker expert here today, from YG Mental Health, and her name is Jennifer Hope. She's the chair of that organization. And her organization, its mission is to raise awareness and reduce stigma around mental health and illness by helping educate and produce events that promote inclusion, diversity, hope, and mental illness, while also raising funds to fund mental health programs throughout where their program reaches. And I'm sure she will give us a bit better of an idea. She runs the organization, and I was just giving the blur. But Jennifer, we feel so honored to have you join us today, a professional in the mental health field. And I would love to throw the floor over to you to introduce yourself and get us started on the topic.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Like Sarah said, I'm the co-chair of YEG Mental Health here in Edmonton, Alberta. I love our mission statement. I like to say what we kind of do is we throw inclusive events. For example, the semicolon tattoo event. So the semicolon is a really big symbol within the mental health community. It's a representation of us continuing our story when we didn't want to or felt we couldn't anymore. And so here in Edmonton, we've tattooed probably about, I'm going to say 30,000 people. And with the 3 tattoo events that we held, we raised about $75,000 here in the city. That money goes to underfunded mental health initiative programs here in Edmonton. So for example, Momentum Walk-In Counseling. A large portion of our money went to helping that organization continue to run, and now they thrive, and they're what they do is they, for low cost, do counseling services, because unfortunately in a lot of places around the world, mental health resources are not free. Counseling does cost money, and unfortunately not all of us can afford to pay for a session an hour long for $200. And so what they do is they let you come into their office, they assess you, and then you kind of pay what you can. And that is an incredible benefit to our community. So we are so proud to help them keep going. Every year on September 10th, Suicide Prevention Day, we also do hold the Bridge of Life candlelight vigil here in Edmonton, Alberta. So we get together, and it's not a fundraiser, it's a total awareness event about suicide, to continue the conversation and to show support in our community for those who have lost their lives. And we've been doing that for about 6 years now. And yeah, so that's sort of what YEG Mental Health does. And I'm so proud to be part of their journey. And myself, I also share my personal story of living with mental illness and recovery alongside that. So that's me.
Amazing. Thank you, Jennifer, for introducing your organization. I think that having that ability to access care when you need it and when you self-identify as needing it, because oftentimes I'm sure you know of individuals who have wanted help, and if they can't get it right then, and the moment passes. And so to be able to have those assistants, no matter where, and oftentimes we need help in our darkest times, right? When maybe we aren't employed, or perhaps our family isn't someone that's safe to talk to. And so having those organizations available that we can reach out to that have prepaid or low scale or is such a valuable part of any community. So thanks for sharing about that. Now I'd love to hear more from you about what Mental Health Day means to you, and your story, and help us sort of understand the importance of this day.
Perfect. So if I'm going to be completely honest, World Mental Health Day for me is every day. I know we celebrate it once a year, like we do Mental Health Week or Mental Health Month, but it really should be an everyday conversation. It should be something that we're focused on in our lives all the time, and it shouldn't be as overlooked as it is, or as stigmatized as it is. So I myself was diagnosed with mental illness at 36 years old. I had always known that I was a little bit different, that I felt a little bit more, but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know that it was okay. I didn't know that I wasn't the only person who felt those ways. And so you kind of just, I'm going to be that weirdo. That's just who I am. That's just it. And live my life. Like I got married. I had 3 kids. And it wasn't until my family sort of went through a really hard time of losing everything. And again, that's one of those stressful situations, those dark times in our lives, that I finally reached out for help, and I was heard and I was seen and I was helped, and I was told, you know, that I wasn't just a weirdo, you know, there was a name for what was going on inside of me, that I wasn't alone, that there was a community of individuals, and that I could get help and I could feel better. And that was the most amazing moment, besides having my children, that I've had in my life. I feel blessed that I was diagnosed with mental illness. And I'm proud to say that I am mentally ill.
Such a great, you know, changing something from passive or to that active voice, right? That is, it's not maybe something that is happening to you, but something that you are embracing and working with and alongside and acknowledging as a part of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't easy to do because of the stigma around it, right? So when I was finally diagnosed with mental illness, sure, at first there was the, oh no, I can't tell anybody this. So what now? Like, what happens now? And I slowly realized that by sharing my story and being open and saying that I have mental illness, there were so many people in my life that went, oh, you know what? I've actually suffered from depression. Or, you know what? I actually have anxiety. Or my brother has schizophrenia. Like, just opens a door to a world of people that I didn't even know were there to support me and to support each other. And it's been such a gift, honestly. And yeah, I'm so excited to be talking about it and sort of sharing what I think are the important things to take away from mental illness and mental health that I wish I knew at a younger age, so that maybe I could have been diagnosed earlier, or to help others get help that they think isn't there.
Totally. I think what would be wonderful, students in the background, as you're listening, I think it would be great if you came up, one of the activities that we had in the classroom, and some of them, some classes have done the activities beforehand, other are fresh to today, which is wonderful. But some of our students from Alaska, who I forgot on the list, have been pre-doing some of the assignments that were associated with this learning event. And one of them was to think up myths that you've heard about mental health illness. And then we can help sort of bash those myths today. And I'll show you one later that Daxton had sort of thought up of himself and then came together with some research. So maybe, because Jennifer, you are a professional in this area, as students think of those myths, but even like within their own communities, because there's this idea of stigmas and stuff, what myths are pervasive and how do we break those down? So maybe that'll be like a low-key background assignment as you're listening to Jennifer and her story and the things that she knows that she's going to share with us. You can also try to think of those myths. If you come up with them, you can have we can make Miss Manassas have to write them down quickly in the chat, or maybe we'll unmute and you can ask them or tell them yourselves. Same with Noah and Xavier from Camera. If you want to break some of the myths that you might know about mental health in the chat, then we'll be able to tackle those as we go through. I'm sorry, I just had this brainwave, Jennifer. I just had to interrupt and say that I think having you here is such an amazing experience to be able to have a professional who self-identifies to really be intimate and answer some of these myths that we've heard that we don't really know who to ask if they're true.
I love busting myths.
Perfect.
So I think that one myth we can bust right off the top is that mental illness doesn't have a look. That there is no way to tell if someone is suffering from mental illness. I know that when I was growing up and someone said the words mentally ill or mental illness to me, I automatically thought crazy. Like I thought someone that was violent. I imagined someone maybe even homeless. I imagined that straitjacket they show or the padded room, because those were the things that they showed us on TV and in the news. There wasn't ever a neighbor of mine that said, I have mental illness, or a family member that came forward. And so I didn't know that mental illness didn't have a look. And I'd like to say that I think that unless I told you I had mental illness, running into me on the street, you probably wouldn't even know. And so I think that that's one huge myth we can just bust right off the top. You can't tell what someone is going through just by looking at them.
No, and with that, it's hard to know, I think, then what the actual sort of statistics around the, like how likely you are to experience even just a period of mental illness or anxiety or tension in your life. And if it, I mean, because it seems that it should be natural. Like we're all humans who are growing and adapting, and we experience both awesome moments of our lives, but also deeply hurtful and sorrowful times in our lives. And I wonder, can you share maybe some about the stats around mental health, just so we get a picture of what is the current sort of, what do we know about mental health and its pervasiveness right now? Or is it sort of, we can't know because it's just beginning to be talked about?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way, I love statistics, but I don't think there's ever really going to be a straight number, just because there's a lot of people that aren't going to share that part of themselves and they're still not ready to, right? I would definitely say that the majority of us, everyone around the world, definitely goes through some form of a mental health issue, not mental illness. That's a completely, the two aren't the same thing. And that's another thing I think people don't know. Mental health and mental illness are very different. Everyone has mental health. And I think that we all go through periods of time, you know, when we lose someone in our lives, that can cause us depression. That can cause us anxiety. If you're living in a household that maybe has some trauma involved in it, there's so many different aspects, but I would definitely say the majority of us definitely go through a time when our mental health is suffering.
Definitely. Would you say that in Canada, I mean, you've been working in this field for a while, you chair an organization so are involved in these conversations. How would you say this conversation has evolved through COVID? Do you think that, I mean, even 2-3 years ago, we were having the same sort of recognition or conversations that we're having now?
No, absolutely not, right? COVID has definitely, if you didn't have some form of a mental health issue before, you've probably had one now. And that's natural and normal, considering all the chaos and the change and the unknowing that's come from all of it, right? Like being stuck in our houses, having that little bit of social anxiety about going outside that maybe we didn't have before. It's definitely caused us to take a look and be more open about it. And I think that that's been amazing. I wish it hadn't taken something like COVID to start the conversation as much as it has, but right now it's needed. This is a needed thing for us to be learning about and talking about.
Amazing. Now, I don't know if you have more of a presentation. I'd love to give you the floor, but I know that also I have lots of questions. So I'm going to turn it over to you and then I'll come back with more questions.
Okay, so I think that the takeaway from my story is this is what I want you guys to know. I want you guys to know that everyone has mental health, that we all have feelings and thoughts we probably don't want to share with other people because we think we might be judged for them. I want you to know that we need to start talking about feelings. This should be an open conversation. When someone says to you, "How are you doing today?" I think we should be able to say, "I'm not really having a great day today," or "I'm sad. I don't really know why, but I am." And unfortunately, that's not what's happening, but I want us to start doing that. I think that that's something we can start doing. And if each of us even started to do that once a week, the change would be incredible and it would happen so fast. Feelings are okay. I think that because we don't talk about them, a lot of people think that there's something wrong with feelings. There's not. We all have feelings. I have feelings, your teachers, your parents. Sometimes we don't talk about our feelings because feelings can be confusing. I know that there's been times where I felt like 80 things all at the same time, and I don't know how to articulate that or say that to somebody. And then I think we don't talk about feelings because of generational cycling. And what that means is sort of my parents didn't talk about feelings in my house. Their parents didn't talk about feelings, and their parents didn't talk about feelings. And so by starting that conversation, we're also going to break those cycles, which is exciting and amazing. In my household, I've broken those cycles, and I know that my children will continue that also. And that, to me, brings so much hope. I wish that I had that when I was growing up. I wish that I had known that I wasn't alone and that other people had these feelings too, because if I had known that, I probably wouldn't have had my very first suicide attempt at 14 years old. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be here anymore. It was because I wanted everything that was going on and the way I was feeling inside to go away. But sometimes we don't know how to do that. And in that confusion, we can think that the only way to make that stop is for us to not be here anymore. And I've learned that that's not true, and that there is help out there, and there is people that care. And I just want all of you guys to know that also. I think that's really important, to know that you might be scared to say how you're feeling, but there's someone out there, I promise, that's felt that exact same way.
Thanks so much for sharing that and for being vulnerable with us. I think we've gotten used to video conferences now where we watch a talking head on YouTube or in a webinar, and we don't feel like it's an intimate conversation. But I think one of the great things that we try to do here at the Center for Global Education is that many of our students are joining from their living rooms, and you're joining from your living room. You know, and well, we're all in the office, but we could be in our living room. This allows us to have these more, this isn't so much a webinar as it is an interactive conversation. And so thank you for sharing your story, because these are difficult realities that people all over the world are going to. And it isn't until we break down these barriers where it's, you know, not polite to speak about these things, that people will be like, oh, that's my story. I see myself in that story, or I see myself maybe in that story, and that I have been there and I understand that. Maybe I didn't experience those things, but mine were similar enough that I had those feelings, or I had those temptations or drives, and that's how we are able to open ourselves up. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing that.
Thank you.
So we have, we had another myth that came in. I think Rebecca found one on our YouTube, and then another one here is that it's impossible to prevent mental illnesses. That one came through on the classroom. So it's impossible to prevent mental illnesses. Would you say that's a truth or a myth that we need to bust?
Oh, this one's kind of tricky, guys. And the reason I say it's kind of tricky is this. Mental illness can happen for many different reasons. So we can definitely there's ways to keep our mental health strong, and so that it's at its best capabilities. So like, you know, all the things you're told by your moms or your teachers or your doctors: nutrition, rest, and self-care. I know everybody uses that word and it gets thrown around out there, but it really is so important to find something that you love that can take you out of when you're having those really hard times. But getting a mental illness can be from different factors. It's not necessarily because your mental health is poor that can contribute, but there's also environmental factors, there's genetic factors, there's chemistry. So I would like to say that I don't think you can do anything to necessarily prevent mental illness, because it might chemically be there, but you definitely can keep your mental health strong. And that might, let's say like this, depression is a mental illness, but there is ways when you keep your mental health strong to not have that depression affect you as largely as maybe a bipolar or a borderline personality disorder. Does that make sense?
I love that we threw you a curveball right from the start. Hey. Wonderful.
Tricky.
I know. So I'm going to call on schools after this to share. As our students have to go, it's the bell. So did you guys have a question for her before I'm putting you on the spot? Never mind. It's one of those teachers that puts students on the spot. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to do that now as well for our students who are joining us.
But I guess we'll see you.
So much online. So we're going to go, maybe we'll have our friends in Massachusetts can bring out one of their myths. And then we'll have one of maybe our students in Russia can bring out a myth. Maybe there's one that's particularly prevalent in your own country that you'd like to share with us. And we'd be like, wow, that's interesting. And then Noah and Savvy, if you have one that you'd like to put in the chat, we would love, or if you want to unmute and ask, that would be another one as well. So we're going to start with our friends in Massachusetts in 1 second, because Rebecca is going to do the one that she found on YouTube, on our YouTube chat first.
Yeah, so this one is a question. Once a family member or a friend develops a mental health problem, he or she will never recover from it.
That is
absolutely, is that busted?
Busted. That is not true at all. You can definitely recover and heal from mental health problems and mental illness. I am in recovery and healing from my mental illnesses. And yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. Yeah, that's not true at all. Not even a little.
Not even a little.
Not even a little.
Our friends in Massachusetts, do you have a question or a myth that you would like to be busted, or do you want to share something that's going on?
We don't right at this time. I'm going to do an activity with my students next week to talk about the myths 1, 2, 3, and 4 that were on the assignment. So we don't have anything right now. We're doing things a little opposite. Sorry.
Oh, worries.
Thank you.
No problem at all. How about our friends in Russia? Do any of them have a myth they'd like to bust, or something they'd like to tell us about mental health and how it's...
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I am Nicole. I'm from Russia, and I'm really glad being here. Thank you for having me. So, and I have a question. And what can you advise for schools, for universities? I think schools need to have more psychological lessons or something like that, and because usually students be nervous about something, about exams, about growing, and especially teenagers. So I think and what can you advise to schools?
Amazing. Thank you so much.
So what I think needs to happen is I think that just like we have a health class in school, I think that we should definitely be talking about mental health as part of that. Kids in school learn about health and their bodies and changes, but we don't really talk about feelings, like you said. And growing up, you go through so many different feelings. There's feelings under feelings. And I think that if we were to add that into the curriculum, starting even as young as grade 5 or grade 6, it would be so beneficial. Yeah, absolutely. It should be part of the curriculum. We should be learning it.
You know, I'm just gonna share my screen for a second here, because we had our students from Bangladesh who wanted to come today, but then they weren't able to with the school exam. They sent some information on their country ahead of time. And so they were talking about some of the statistics that are in Bangladesh right now about people suffering from COVID specifically related to increased mental illness, but also young people and how many are able to access and seek medical attention. And then what they said for their school, what they're doing. So it has different organizations within Bangladesh and the government, and that there's lots going on in terms of like high level. But in schools, what are they doing? So they have many schools, I know in Canada here, even at our school, they have peer support. So they have a group, a club that comes together and our peer support helpers. And so you can email just very anonymously the peer support team, and they'll meet with you and talk with you. If you're having troubles with homework, they'll set you up with tutors. If it's something in your home, they'll as a youth to a youth. Instead of, because sometimes we are intimidated to tell adults, or when I was a youth, I should say, I was intimidated to tell an adult my problems because I didn't want it to be blown out of proportion maybe, or I was worried I would be judged, or I was worried someone would think differently of me. But telling another peer of mine was different. There wasn't as much power in that relationship, right? We were one-on-one. So there's that here, but here in their school, they have workshops and online events because they're still completely online in Bangladesh. They aren't back in the classes just yet. And then extracurricular activities around their communities. So helping other students know about yoga classes and helping other students know what's going on in their communities that will help with mental illness or any sort of mental distress. And so I think in all of our schools, those are some wonderful opportunities that work not just in Bangladesh, but that work here. Like we could definitely, as a school, start an email list that goes to students that says, hey, there's free yoga at the community center this week. Do you want to check it out? And just letting other people know about what's going on both in the city and in maybe where our province where we live, or even in our school community. And maybe we need a yoga class in our school. And maybe we need more mindfulness time in our school to reflect on these. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in and share because it was wonderful that the students in Bangladesh sent us that slide about, their perspectives of what's going on in the ground in Bangladesh right now, because it seems so far away, but at the same time, that's exactly what we need in our communities. And it's interesting that these conversations they don't just happen alone in America or in Canada, but that this is something that everyone is trying to literally get their heads around in these times that are changing. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on that? Like Russia versus Bangladesh versus Canada or the US, and how we identify the needs of our school and then try to help meet those needs.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you know what? When you said that they had peer support, I wanted to jump out of my chair, like in excitement, because that is like the greatest thing. But I think that I wouldn't have thought that. And I think that exactly kind of what you said is us learning about each country and what their needs are versus what ours are, and how alike or not alike they are, is something that we should all be learning about too.
How would you suggest to students that they start this sort of conversation in their schools if there's nothing going on? Because it's post, it's pre, it's during, it's post, I don't know where we are in COVID. We are somewhere in it. But a lot of schools are back, and kids are back maybe for the first time in years. How should they figure out what their school needs?
Talking to each other. I think that that's like the biggest thing, right? Kids like to talk. You guys talk to each other, and you kind of know more than adults do about what's going on in the scene underneath. But I think you could even start like in a classroom with like a gratitude wall, or like just little things, creating a self-care poster or something kids can look at, where they can get ideas from each other.
Amazing, that's so great. I remember now, March 20th is World Happiness Day. And I was in a school hosting an event for another organization that day. And they had put a big Post-it or a big pink sheet with like emoji smiley faces on it across the main entrance of their whole hall. And then they were handing out yellow Post-it notes to all the students as they came in. And they were asking each student to write a note about a teacher or another student, or about something about any of the staff, or anything about their day that was positive, as a way of sort of promoting this sort of world happiness. But we could also do something like that for World Mental Health Day, where, you know, I mean, it is on Sunday, so you got all next week still that you can mark it. Like, what if we put up a big poster in our school and talked about all the things that are hopeful, or even the things that are stressing us out right now, and have other, if you see that someone else has that issue as well, like it's amazing to see yourself reflected and to not feel so alone. And so even being able to be open and honest about these conversations and hopefulness about it too. Anyways, that was just, I remember.
No, because that reminded me of an activity like the mirror activity, which I had a school do, and teachers and principal were amazing at letting them do it, but they got dry erase markers, and in the bathrooms on the mirror, they would write messages to each other. And so when you would go in, you would see this message on the mirror, like, you're not alone, or have a great day, or you're beautiful. And then at the end of the day, they would erase them and do it again. And they did that for a week. And they noticed that the kids felt so much better about themselves and found it easier to start doing it without writing it on the mirror. It just became like a habit, sort of. So I think that those are great ideas.
Amazing. Now, I would love if there was anyone in our chats on YouTube or here live in the room, if you have any events that go on in your school that you would like to share with some of our other schools, because so much of this, the power comes from you acting, you seeing that there's a need, and that you don't have to wait till you're old like me. You can do stuff now in your schools. You can be that youth leader that reaches out and touches other youth in a time when they might need that the most. And so if there are, I know, so the peer support was as an example, there's activities you could run and encourage. There's nothing that principals and other administrators, teachers love more than a student with a great idea, an initiative, who comes and says, I want to do this. I want a World Mental Health Day wall. Let's throw it up. And what teacher says no to stuff like that, right? I've always been inspired by the teacher or by the students in my class who come to me with passion and drive and an amazing idea that doesn't cost me any money and would love to help promote it. Jennifer, I know I'm putting you on a spot a lot, and you're not based in a school, but and you were acknowledging the peer support and this other activity, but can you think of other initiatives that are within cities that students could look to or other organizations? Like how do they find, I think I'm getting to my question now, how do students find out what's going on in the city? Like if they want to help promote yoga classes, or they would like to bring in a speaker from your organization, how do students find out these resources in their communities so they don't do it alone? It's hard to do stuff by yourself, but you can, there's groups out there.
There is.
Yes.
I was actually going to say that volunteering is like the biggest way to get your foot in the door. But then how do you find who you're going to volunteer for? And the truth is, social media is a big way nowadays to look for organizations and stuff but like here in Edmonton, we have 211 where we can call and they can give us a list of places and initiatives in the city. And then you call and you talk to them. Yeah, I think that volunteering is a great way to get your foot in the door. And I mean, I would go to a walk or a run for mental health that someone started. And you don't have to be me or YEG Mental Health to do that. But I mean, if you were to write us and tell us that was your idea, we would love to help and support you do something like that. So I think you'd find a lot of that in the community, but it's really getting out there and looking because there are a lot of initiatives that aren't on social media and don't really advertise themselves because they are underfunded. And so it's really getting out there.
Wonderful. Oh, we have a comment from, I think a friend here is in the United States. Students can start an organized podcast that speaks to mental health concerns across their school and broader community. Exactly. I mean, one of our students who is just in here, she has a YouTube channel that she streams her thoughts and like a blog. It was blog in my day because I'm an old person. And now you can use TikToks. You can make some TikToks about mental health in your school and where to find resources. You can make TikToks just telling telling their stories, right? There's so many ways that you can help to break down the silence around this. And that matters. All those small, creating community, showing people that they're seen, all of that creates inclusiveness that brings these topics to the front. So we are in our last just couple minutes here before we sign off for the day. I want to thank again all of our friends who joined us here in the room and we're talking with us today, but also our friends who are joining us online afterwards from all our schools. I might throw them up again, the list of them at the end, so that they feel like I've seen them and I've heard them. And I'm sure, Jennifer, if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask maybe more privately in follow-up, we have Jennifer's contact, and I'm sure she would be happy to help us address any of these issues. But before we sign off for the day, Jennifer, is there anything you'd like to leave World Mental Health Day? Is there anything like statement or guiding vision or something that you would like to leave these students with as they sign off and enter into their school lives?
I want you guys to know that you are not alone and that there is help out there. I want you to know that talking about mental illness and suicide does not make you mentally ill or suicidal. I want you to know that you're going to be the change. I'm so excited for what you guys are going to do, because you're having these conversations like we are today. And yeah, I just want you guys to know more than anything. It's so cliche to say that it's okay to not be okay, or you are not alone. But these are true statements, guys. And sometimes in our darkest times, we can really feel like there isn't anybody there. And the truth is that there is. We're here and we want to help you. So please, please reach out. Local crisis lines, if you are an emergency need, 911, just let someone know.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jennifer. So I'm just going to quickly once again say, oh, I forgot to share Daxton's myth. Oh, Daxton, sorry about that, buddy. We will, if you're watching, it was an awesome myth and you did great to bust it. But as we exit today, I just want to say a kind thank you for Jennifer for joining us today and helping us lead through this conversation on World Mental Health Day. To all of our schools that are here in the Zoom room and our students who are joining us homeschooling in the Zoom room, thank you so much for coming today. We have many more events this fall. We hope we'll see you at some of them. We have some around refugees, around treaty rights, around, we'll be live from the UN Climate Change Conference in Scotland in just a few weeks, and we'd love to have you in some of those. We have one event, I'm just so excited. This morning I confirmed the speaker. He's a solar punk artist, solar punk. It's so cool. They're doing art and activism and how that really feeds into, and it's more broad than just climate change. So we'll be looking at it, art and activism through a climate change lens. It's all about, like, you could have punk art around mental illness. You know, like these aren't conversations that exist in silos. They are applicable across the board. So we would love to see you at any of our upcoming events, but thank you as well to the high schools across the world that are logging on later today or watching the video online later today. We do enjoy having you here. Thank you to everyone. It was so wonderful having you here. Spread the word about World Mental Health Day. It's an important day for us to start looking at and talking about and celebrating in our schools and our communities. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who joined us in the room from Russia and Massachusetts and Alberta and everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Goodbye. It was really interesting.